What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to bring you guys a hat format market watch, specifically because as hat format is starting to gain more popularity, as Konami is now, recognizing it as a retro Yu-Gi-Oh format, I wanted to just kind of go over some cards that I think that should be on your radar and talk about cards that might not have the most printings, if any at all, or maybe they have a standout rarity or something that you want to keep in mind if, these are more so for specific decks. But if you're planning to play one of those decks that needs one of these cards, I want you guys to just, keep that in mind for this, so that if you need your 1 or 2 or 3 copies or whatever, you can pick those up. But with that being said, in no way am I trying to manipulate the market or, tell people to go and buy out these cards. Personally, I'm not a fan of buyouts, specifically just because I think hat format is a great format, and I don't want cards to get bought out and people to feel priced out of the format the way a lot of players have with other retro formats or even current modern Yu-Gi-Oh! The other thing to note is, again, I'm no financial advisor. I do not hold any responsibility for, your financial choices or anything like that. But in general, I have had a lot of experience buying and selling cards in the past, as I've been playing this game for, probably 10 or 15 plus years at this point, definitely closer to that 15 plus point. And in general, my whole channel is dedicated to hat format. So I feel that I have a very good understanding of the format, some of the weird niche tech cards and stuff like that. And also keep in mind, there are a lot more cards than what I'm going to show in this video. So if you guys would like a part 2 or something like that, definitely make sure to let me know in the comment section and make sure you are subscribed. But anyways, guys, let's get straight into this video. So the first card I want to talk about is Mermail Abyss Gund. As you can see here, there's only 2 printings of this card. One is from the original set it came out in, Abyss Rising, which is a very old set. I believe it's like 11 or 12 years old at this point. And then the other printing it has is an Astral Pack Super. So obviously Super is its highest rarity. As you see, the original printing does have 92 listings, and with Abyss Gund being a one of in the Mermail deck, it's a little less likely for this card to actually move in terms of its lower end. But if people want to max out their Mermail deck, which, people love their high end, and especially for Mermail, it has tons of great looking cards, you do want to be aware of this. 25 listings. You have some light plays here for about $3 to $4. And then looking for the lowest near mint verified, we have one for $6. We have actually quite a handful of them for $6, and there is a couple pages, but again, there is 25 listings. That doesn't include, obviously the seller has 3 copies, but keep that in mind, again, as just a one of for the Mermail deck. If you do want the higher end one, then, make sure to take a look into that, or for example, if you have one and someone needs it, just keep in mind that this does only have 2 printings, as well as, again, it does have that rare printing, which there's tons of listings. We can take a quick look at this. Yeah, these are very cheap, basically like $1, 80 cents pretty much for a first ed near mint, and there are plenty to go around. The next card I want to talk about is also Mermail related, and that is going to be Abyss Sphere. Bonanza and Stampede and all these sets came out for rarity collection, and there were lots of hat format cards that got reprinted, and there was a handful of Mermail cards as well. Things like Abyss Gaios, Pike, Infantry, Dragoons, all those cards got reprints, but Abyss Sphere did miss that. And with that being said, it only has 2 printings, the Ultra Rare and the Ultimate Rare, both from its original set, Abyss Rising, and as you can see, only 4 listings for the Ultra Rare and 9 listings for the Ulti. So if we click on the Ultra here, we see the lowest listing is a heavy played first ed for $14. And there's no first ed near mints. The cheapest of the near mint on limbs is going to be $18, and then it goes up just a little bit, obviously, because there's not that many printings of it. And keep in mind, this is a card that is a 3 of in the Mermail deck. It's very strong to be able to summon Lind off of. So, this is unfortunately one of those cards that you will need multiple copies. Looking at the Ulti, you can get near mint on limbs for $30. And looking for first eds, you have a light play first ed, or I guess you have one here verified for $34, and then you have some in the 40 range, and the lowest near mint alti first verified is going to be about $43, and there's only 2 listed there. So again, just a card that you really want to keep in mind if you are planning to play the Mermail strategy. Next up, we have Temperance of Prophecy. Again, there are a lot of Spellbook cards that got reprints, whether that's in the past or more recently in those rarity collections, and Temperance is one of the cards that did not get a reprint, and in more recent hat format lists that have been topping online tournaments, we have seen that Temperance has started to be played a lot more, usually as a 2 or 3 of in the Spellbook deck. Some people don't prefer this, but if it is the version that you are wanting to play, as you see, there are only 5 listings left. We have a moderate play for about, $6 to $7. We have another first ed moderate play for about $8, and there's actually no near mints. You can get some light plays for this one is, what is this, like $11 or $12, and this one as well is around that, 12 to 13 for a light play first ed, but this is one of those cards that you definitely want to keep in mind if you're planning to play the Spellbook strategy with Temperance. It does offer some benefit to the deck, specifically because it allows you to kind of fetch the High Priestess out of deck, so it is very good at applying pressure. Again, not everyone likes it, but just to keep in mind, it only has that 1 printing, and keeping on pace with Spellbook, here we have Spellbook of Life, another card that only has its 1 printing, and usually this is just a 1 of in the deck anyways, but just keep in mind, this one does have more listings. At least it has 54 available. You see some like damage first ed near mints, or not near mints, damage first ed in general for about, $7 to $8. Moving on down, let's see if you can find some foreign copies for about $10. Let's move to the next page, see if we can find some English near mints, which we can with several available. This person has 10 available near mint first ed, and they are verified at $10 each. So definitely not too bad, especially given the rest of the deck, outside of a handful of cards, are pretty cheap, and there are lots of reprints for a lot of the stuff for Spellbook. So just keep that one in mind. And one more Spellbook card I wanted to talk about is Spellbook of Power. This one does have multiple printings. Obviously, it has its original printing in Return of the Duelist, as well as a structure deck common reprint. So it has 2 commons, and then obviously the 1 higher rarity, similar to Mermail. Spellbook is a deck that a lot of people like to make really shiny, and we've seen these starting to get bought out a bit, and only 16 listings here. We can click on this real quick, and there's some moderate plays for $28, and then it shoots up to light plays being about $35, $36. Going to near mint, we see at about $44 before quickly jumping into the 50s. Again, not that many listed. You do see sellers here with like 2 copies, 2 copies, 3 copies, 2 copies. So they're definitely around and available, but it is somewhat short on listings, and it's kind of natural. It's from a Astral pack, and it is one of those desired alties. Usually Spellbook of Power is a 1 of, sometimes maybe a deck will play 2 of it, but just keep that in mind if you are wanting to really bling out your Spellbook deck. Next up, talking about Bougen cards. Bougen unfortunately did take a bit of a hit with the new Konami changes to Time Wizard events, and with that being said, it is still a very strong and very, fan favorite type deck. Yamato recently got a QCR printing, and it also had like its original printing, a Mega Pack printing, an Alti printing, and I believe even like a gold printing and stuff. So there's definitely a lot of Yamatos to go around, but one of the cards that is usually a 1 to 2 of in the deck being Bujin Harume. It's an extender. It only has its 2 printings. It has its original printing in Primal Origin that at this point again is about 10 or 11 years old, and it has its 2015 Megaton reprint, both of which as you can see are kind of low in quantities. We see the original only has 20 and the Mega Pack has 32. For some reason usually the Mega Packs are a little lower in quantities, though this time it is a little more, but we can see that the prices are somewhat up on these. So here going to Harume, if we look, we see like a heavy play for about $4 and $5. Looking for a first ed near mint. Here's an unverified for, about $8. Looking here, we see about, $8 to $9 on Bujin Harume for the originals, so it's not terrible, again, especially as just a 1 or 2 of, but if you are planning to play Bujins, you might need a copy of this. And then quickly going down here, I guess Mikazuchi also falls into that category, being that this, I'm pretty sure it has the same amount of printings. It has its Shadow Specters printing, which is even older than Harume, as well as having its Megaton print. I think that's all the versions of it. We can click this actually real quick. Yeah, this also only has 2 printings. And as we see, yeah, as I mentioned, the Megaton printing for some reason has less listed. And here's the original. Obviously, a lot of people do like to go for original, so we'll take a look. This one being a lot cheaper, being only about $2 on up to about $3, but there is quite a lot listed at 38. And this is another card that usually is only played as a 1 or 2 of, so it's not too terrible at all. And one other Bujin card I want to talk about is Bujin Carnation, that only has 3 printings. It has its original rare, it has a mega pack rare, and then it has its super rare from the Astral pack. Obviously, super rare is going to be your highest rarity. But again, some people like the original, which there's obviously tons available at 158 listings. And even for the Mega Pack, there's 51. Though with that being said, we see that the Super only has 14 listings available. And even with that, we do see it's only about $1. We see $1, like $2 for, again, these are all near mints I'm talking about. We have some light plays at about $2 to $3, but for the most part, it is staying under $3. This is a card that usually the Bujin deck plays as 2 or 3 of. So, you know, it is something to keep in mind for that, given there are so many like a very low amount of listings for the Super in general, if that's something that you are looking into playing. After that, I want to talk about Madolche Palooza. This is another card that only has 1 printing, and usually, you know, the Madolche deck, depending on the version you're going to play, is only going to play 1 copy of this, and some won't even play it at all. Personally, I think if you're playing like Madolche hands, you shouldn't play Palooza because it's just a dead card, but if you are going with a more pure build, Palooza is the one card that doesn't really have many reprints. In Stampede, Madolche got like basically the whole deck in QCR, or I think even Bonanza had a couple Madolche cards, but I think that was more so for the modern Madolche decks. And then the other stuff is like commons, or I think some ultras or something that have multiple printings, I should say. But Palooza is that one card that if you do need your 1 copy, we see moderates and heavy plays in the $4 to $5 range. We see some light plays around $5. And then looking for near mints here, we're going to have to go to the second page. Still looking for near mints. Here's a light play for, you know, about $5 to $6. And near mint here we see for about $8. Again, as a 1 of if you're choosing to play a more pure Madolche deck, which a lot of people prefer the hands build. It's usually the better of the versions, or even I guess some will play like the artifact versions and they might play this card. But here we see again, there's multiple listings for near mint, and these sellers, you know, this one has 2, and I'm sure if we kept going down in the pages, we could definitely find people with definitely more listings. And looking at this, yeah, 34 listings, it's not too terrible for a random 1 of. Rainbow Kuribo is a pretty interesting tech card that a lot of people will play in Lightsworn Ruler, actually. Back in the day, people would play Necrogardna and stuff like that, and I do think Necrogardna is a great card in the Lightsworn Ruler deck, but over the years, we've seen a little more rise in Rainbow Kuribo, specifically being because it counts as 2 forms of negation in a sense. When your opponent declares a direct attack, you're able to either special summon it and equip to the monster, or you equip to the monster that's attacking directly and that monster can attack, or if your opponent declares a direct attack, you can special summon it and it's basically going to be a blocker. It gets banished after using that effect, but in general it is a light monster, and you know, having the versatility similar to breakthrough skill in a sense, in terms of having 2 versions of ways to use it, whether that's either in the hand or graveyard, is very versatile, as well as, again, it being a light monster works really well for your Light Ray Diablosis, or however you pronounce it. I always can't remember the name of that card, the Light Ray regardless. And something I noticed when looking at this is, yes, there are multiple printings. You do have your common, you have your super, you have your 2 secrets being the original and the mega pack. And what I noticed is the advent calendar is actually very low in listings, only 12 of them. And this was kind of an exclusive type product, so it makes sense that it is going to be low in listings. But even then, we do see that it's not very expensive in terms of a card. It's only about $2 to $3 for this card, and people have them. You see they are available, and as a card that usually people are going to play as a 1 or 2 of, I wouldn't really rush to go and pick up this card. If you need your 1 or 2 copies, go for it. You have lots of options, and even going and looking at the originals, which do look very good, I can say that. Here we see like a near mint first ed for about $3, and moving on down, you have like some light plays for like the $4 to $5. And so they are available and they aren't too expensive, but they are getting somewhat low in terms of quantities with only 29. But really, there's only 1 or 2 decks in the format that are even going to play that, so it's not something you should really worry about. The next card I want to talk about is going to be Nikitama. This one might seem a little weird, but there are several spirit decks in hat format, and all of them are going to be usually playing 3 copies of this. It's a card that gives you an additional summon of a spirit monster, as well as while you control a spirit, if this card gets sent to the graveyard, you're able to draw a card, and that's a mandatory effect, but I'm not going to get into rulings and stuff with that. But here we see it only has its 1 printing, and it's at 35 listings, so keep that in mind if that is, if you're planning to play like Spirit Control, Ghost Strix Spirit, Spirit Chaos, or anything else. There's some ritual decks and stuff that play this that I'll probably show off more of in the future. But here we see that just for the rare, it is at about $1, close to $2 as you move down the page. But if you look at the quantities, there's like 5 available, 2, 2, 3, 5, 2. So people definitely have these, and I can't see this card like being some crazy expensive card, but just keep in mind that compared to like Aritama that has, I think, 2 or 3 printings, Nikitama is the one that only has its 1 printing. Another very common card that you will find in hat format, obviously being artifact cards, Moraltac had a lot of printings recently, as well as Sanctum and stuff like that. One card that doesn't quite have as many printings is going to be your Artifact Ignition, which only has its original printing and its Megaton printing, as well as what would be considered the highest rarity being the secret rare from Battles of Legend. But obviously what you can see is these do have a lot of listings. The Mega Pack has 30. The original has 51, and the secrets have 62. This has actually gone up since I refreshed the page, so there's definitely no lack of these, but if you are wanting considerably the higher rarity, I do want you to keep in mind that the secret is, here. If you prefer the original, there's still plenty of listings for the ultras, as some people do like that, but again, people do like the high rarity stuff, and as you see, even on this graph, I don't really trust the graph that often, from just looking at trends and stuff like that. But in general, as you see, it has dipped down in price a lot, and you can find these ignitions and stuff for the $1 to $2. So definitely not bad. And similar to the other cards I've shown, there are plenty of listings available from individual sellers. If you are deciding to play 2 or 3 copies of this, there's definitely people with those available, even some foreign ones there. There's a German one. So that is just another one of those cards. Crazy Box is an interesting card. It only has its 1 printing in Numbers Hunters, and in general, this is one of those cards that not every deck is going to play. There are a lot of rank 4 decks in hat format. It's an Xyz format, to be fair, and this one we see has 106 listings, but we see it does have a bit of price to it. This is one of those cards that if you specifically need a card, if your opponent is on skill drain, or even if you're maining skill drain, usually this card is not very good and it can't attack, but under skill drain it is a 3000 beater, and sometimes against, for example, the ruler decks that do play skill drain, you are going to want to have something to apply pressure with, and Crazy Box is usually going to be your go-to for a rank 4. And so looking at this, we see some light plays for, the $3 range, and the near mints are also right around the $350-ish range, and there are plenty to go around. around, again, 106 listings. So if this is one of those cards you have space for, or if your deck inherently loses to skill drain, please do keep that in mind. Speaking of rank 4s, here is Heartland Draco, a card that also only has 2 printings, being a premium gold, as well as that advent calendar that we were talking about. This card has gained a lot more popularity over the years, as some people will choose to play this over Gaga Cowboy. Now at the NAWCQ, people might go more so for Cowboy because it's going to have the new time rules and everything. But in terms of a card that can just steal games, Heartland Draco is that card. And I noticed that this was getting a bit low in terms of quantities, only 11 listings. And with that being said, it is about a $5 to $6 card, but people have these. While there is 11 listings, all of these people have multiple for the most part. So it's definitely not bad. And again, this is just one of those cards that some people like, some people don't. And if you are choosing to, it only has those 2 printings. One more Xyz I want to talk about is going to be number 80, Rapsidian Berserk. This is one of those cards that has a little bit of modern implications. I believe there were a couple Ryziel decks that were teching this in simply because it's kind of like a double DD Crow, and against decks like Mitsurugi and stuff like that, people have kind of played around with it. But for the most part, I want to say that this card does see a lot of play in hat format. Most decks that can make a rank 4 are going to play some combination of this, and you see that it has its rare and its super. The rare has plenty of listings at 51 listed, and they're in the $2 to $3 range, but the super from the Astral Pack is the highest rarity, and it has 17 listings. So if we go and look for the near mint copies, we see some foreign ones for about $6, and yeah, in general, it looks like they are going to be in that $6 to $8 range. So just keep that in mind. The other thing I want, oh, this person has 36 actually. So even then there is a bit of a wall holding this price. One thing I want to talk about with the supers for this, as I have ordered a lot of them in the past since I have so many hat format decks and stuff, is a lot of the Astral supers, while they are listed at near mint, will come in with, finger dent damage and stuff like that all over the fronts of them. So keep that in mind when buying these. And that's just because some of the older cards like this one, when they were used so much, people tend to play with them a lot. And as a result, sometimes they dig their finger into it when pointing at it for an effect or something like that. So just keep that in mind. And the last card I want to talk about is also going to be, a card that is a little more specific, but there are a handful of decks that play it, usually being the ruler decks and things like that, or Mermail, for example. Sylvan, there's a handful of other decks, but is going to be Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Trees. This card only has 3 printings. It has its common, its rare, and its super. So there's definitely enough to go around, especially looking at the original. There's 186 listings. The common has 105, and even the super has 32 listings, which you can get these Leos. We'll just click on it, for example, the rare for like 18 cents. And here you see someone with 192 of them, or 190 of them. Oh, my bad. That's actually the common. Looking at the rare, we see, yeah, also not expensive, 18 cents as well for a near mint verified copy. So just keep that in mind. And again, there's people with tons of these, but the super is going to be considerably the highest rarity for this card. And these ones are going to run you about, $3 to $4 for a verified near mint copy. And it looks very nice. I could definitely see some of these cards that I mentioned getting reprints eventually, just because they're kind of awkward cards, like Leo. I don't know, just it being a super, or same with like Rapsidian Berserk. It's just one of those cards that I could kind of see having a reprint of sorts. But anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it, comment any questions or videos you want to see in the future, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to get notified anytime I put a new video out, share this video with your friends. And again, guys, I am not telling you to go out and buy these cards. I'm not telling you to, hype up the prices of these or anything. I just wanted to bring some awareness to these. And there's definitely a lot more cards I can talk about, a lot more niche things, or a lot more of the generic things that have slowly started going up or getting bought out with the announcement of hat format being the Attack of the Giant card for this year's NAWCQ. So if you guys do want another one like this, definitely let me know. And anyways, guys, I will see you in the next video.